Y'all ready?
Fish Stripes Live coming to you on a Tuesday evening leading up to Friday's trade deadline. I know we're all very excited in here for the trade deadline. I think a lot of us are just ready to see how everything resolves for the Marlins as we approach the July 30th deadline. So much anticipation, so much speculation, so many rumors over the last month or so, including about a guy that I'm wearing on a shirt right now. Shout out to Kenny from Takes Were Made for the thick Jesus sweatshirt. I absolutely love it. It's beautiful. And I know we'll be getting into what could possibly happen with Jesus Aguilar at this deadline here coming up. But I think we should start as the Marlins get ready for a series with the Orioles, which I don't think we're going to spend a lot of time on today because there are so many other things to get to. But that is the game that will be played. Obviously, I think the first thing that we should all talk about is the biggest trade deadline rumor, and it's one of the biggest names that's on the market around the league, obviously, as we all know, and it's Starling Marte. We've been talking about it for months on this show. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm really just kind of excited to see a resolution and just kind of see it all be over and the Marlins kind of move on from all of this. So, Hector, you're joining us first this week, special guest. It's good to have you, man. Good to finally talk to you. So, look, talk to me where you're at with this Starling Marte fiasco and just kind of where you see this going over the next few days.
Yeah, I mean, it's just been an interesting thing to follow, with all the changes and, oh, this team's really the one that's interested. Now this team takes the lead. First it was like the Giants, Phillies. Now it's now the Yankees are becoming more involved. The Giants were like, oh, we could see Elia Ramos or Joey Bart, but now it seems like the Yankees or the Phillies are the front runners. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens during the trade deadline because there's a lot that could happen. I mean, Marte's definitely one of the most coveted pieces that's on the market this trade deadline. And big reason is he's a center fielder. And there's teams that definitely need a center fielder. I mean, the Giants most definitely needs one. But it's going to be interesting. I'm pretty sure the Marlins are going to wait until the last minute, try to get the best offer that they can get from one of the contenders, and whoever makes the Marlins an offer they can't refuse, we'll be getting Starling Marte for at least half of the season.
Yeah, and I think the thing that you mentioned there is that this is going to go down right to the very end. With the trade deadline recently, so much has been happening at the right at 4:00, even after 4:00. So Isaac, based off what we've seen from the deadline so far, so we saw Nelson Cruz get traded. Adam Frazier was a big deal that went down the other day. Andrew Chafin gets traded from the Cubs to the A's last night. What do you kind of see? What have you seen from the market so far? And is it encouraging for the Marlins with Marte, or is it kind of discouraging?
Well, with Marte particularly, you saw Eli tweet out earlier that his trade value, according to that website, went down a little bit. It went down about like 7 points for whatever, whatever you'll do, whatever you want with that. But overall, you see some big names floated out there. Max Scherzer might be on the market. Trey Turner, who I thought is very interesting. He might be up for grab. He might be dangled a little bit by the Nats, knowing that they can't sign him long term. So it might look good, for teams that can't get that starting pitcher, that can't get that, Trey Turner. Marte is a bona fide 5-star, 5-tool center fielder. And, if the Marlins package him with someone, I think it could be good news for the Marlins for sure.
Kevin, you see that Adam Frazier trade, and I think all of us kind of thought it was a little underwhelming. So, when you see that, do you kind of think, oh boy, like maybe we need to temper our expectations a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, that Adam Frazier, the trade wasn't anything crazy. The return, they didn't give up any major league players to start off with on the roster. So that just it doesn't, I wouldn't say it sets the market firmly in Marte, but Miami would have to add at least another major league player, maybe Bly or Flo or whoever it is on that roster, to just maybe get that prospect everyone wants or that center fielder that they want for the future. If it's Helio Ramos from the 49ers, from the Giants. I've seen NFL news lately. It's getting to me. It's just to see what happens. And if the Marlins are in Joey Bart, which I've seen that God damn, the Giants are going to trade him if they would trade him. But we'll have to see what happens. Miami does have to add pieces if they want that kind of prospect.
Yeah, and remember that the Pirates are probably looking for lower level minor leaguers more than anything. So let's say if the Marlins made that same trade, they probably get something different. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, Alex Carver is joining us now, and Alex, when you look at what's been going on with the deadline, where do you kind of see things, right now with the Marlins? Are you encouraged by what the Marlins could possibly get for Marte, or are you kind of saying like, this isn't going to be what we hoped?
Yeah, I think from what you're seeing so far, it's pretty much buyer's market, and other teams know where the Marlins are. They know that this is an expiring contract and that they have to trade him or risk losing him for nothing. And other teams know that, and they're going to take advantage of that. So you look at what's happened so far, as you guys were just saying, with what the teams have that we're looking at, whether it be the Yankees or the Astros, which I heard about, which apparently aren't going to give him to the Marlins, or aren't going to trade with the Marlins, I should say, because our asking price is too high for Starling Marte. They've kind of moved on from everything that I've been reading and hearing. And then, of course, you have the Giants, which you just talked about, maybe a couple Dodgers, a couple other teams in there. The minor league systems, I've said this before, are not a lot. There's a couple pieces mixed in that you could say, okay, maybe this guy, maybe that guy. But if you want that major league ready prospect, man, there's not a lot. And then the ones that there are, can you get them? I would say it's going to be hard. As you guys were just saying, it's going to take more than Marte to get Ramos. It would take probably more than Marte to get Joey Bart. So I don't know. Honestly, I don't feel good about it, Ethan. That's how I'll answer the question.
Yeah, and I haven't really seen anything concrete yet. I haven't seen these teams are having engaged talks, or there's really something on the move with either team. The one team I really saw a report for was the Giants in that Craig Mish article. And, Julio Ramos was the name that was floated around, which got a lot of people excited. And that's why his name has come up in discussions so much. But again, nothing has really started. It doesn't seem like anything is moving. And of course, we all kind of think that this is going to go down to the very last second. I mean, I really do think that we don't get a trade until on Friday. But what do you guys think about the fact that Starling Marte is in the lineup? Noah, I'm going to go to you for the fan perspective, as I usually do. What are your thoughts on the fact that, Starling Marte, there's still 2 games to be played until the deadline, and he is in the lineup today? Would you rather see the Marlins kind of preserve him and say, we're not going to risk him getting injured?
You have assets, use them. I don't. If you're about to sell a car, do you not drive it ever? If you're about to, that was a bad analogy because you wouldn't drive the car. I'm gonna forget I said that. Listen, I just spent 4 hours at a dentist, so it's I don't really know what to think right now with anything that's going on with this team.
Yeah. What are you feeling right now, man? Like talk to me about.
I'm feeling
we're
pain.
3 days
I'm feeling
away.
Suffering and anguish and tired, and it's a roller coaster of emotions. I want to see Sandy sweep. I want to see Sandy just mow down the Orioles, but I also want a better draft pick, which I hate saying, but yeah. It's just this team is tough.
Yeah, it's tough, and it's in a tough situation where, again, we're going to spend a lot of time here talking about the trade deadline because the Marlins and Orioles are playing. Like, who really wants to watch the Marlins and Orioles play? I think what a lot of people are excited about is, where some of these guys are going to end up, and so. Before we move on to some of the other names that could be floated out there, let's talk about which teams kind of interest you guys in terms of who can put together the best package. So we talked about the Giants, but Hector, all of a sudden the Yankees seem to be a player which I really don't understand. To be honest, I know it's the Yankees, and I know they have to buy every year, but they're like 9 games out. They're not very good. I know they can use a center fielder, but it just doesn't make sense to me for them to go for Starling Marte, whereas a team like the Phillies, the division is terrible. They're right in it. They can make a run at it. The Giants obviously are the best team in Major League Baseball this year, and adding a center fielder and maybe a bullpen piece, if like we've talked about the Marlins throwing a bullpen piece, could be a really great move for them. So, Hector, the way you look at it, when you look around at the teams that are involved, I think really it comes down to the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Giants, the Astros, and the Phillies, but now I guess the Astros are kind of out of it. So who do you think provides the Marlins the best option for Starling Marte?
I mean, if you can go get a guy like Joey Bart, who's pretty close to MLB ready, or might be even MLB ready, you go for it because obviously that's a guy that answers a big question mark that you have on your team. You obviously need to upgrade the catcher position, and Bart has looked great offensively and defensively in the minor leagues. He's in AAA, and even the short time that he's played in the big leagues this season, he's played well. I think he's only got 6 at bats, but he's got 2 hits, so. It's a very small sample size, but obviously there's been some production there. But I mean, if the Yankees get him, I think this isn't their end game is not just hey, it's for the end of the season. It's a long term thing because they're going to try to extend it because you know what, this season might not work out for us. We might not make it this season, but if Marte's in our lineup next season, maybe we get a couple more wins. Maybe we're closer to making it into the playoffs. But so if the Yankees do trade for him, I would say that they're trading him and they're planning on extending him at least before he enters free agency. If it's the Giants, I think it might be a 1 year thing. They're going to obviously try to extend him, but their window to win is kind of short because they rely a lot on older guys.
Yeah.
It's a very, very veteran lineup. So and that's why I think Joey Bart might be cheaper than some would expect because the Giants don't have a lot of young good players. So this might be the only, and this was they were a huge surprise. No one expected them to be this good. Maybe third place. I think they're still leading the NL West.
They're running away with the NL West. They've extended a lead, and they were expected not. I don't even think people predicted them third. I think a lot of people had them last in that division. They were not expected to be a very good team at all. They were expected to be one of the worst teams in baseball because they were going through a rebuild. It was supposed to be the victory tour for Buster Posey and Brandon Belt and Brandon Crawford, and all of a sudden, all 3 of these guys, are all-star caliber players again. And yeah, I agree with you. They are going all in. They should go all in because they want to give these guys one last run at a 4th title, which would just be the most incredible thing where they go from rebuild to title winners, with the same core that they won in 2012, 2010, 2014. And I mean, I'm all for it. I have that Giants love in my heart. I'm all for it. But at the same time, Alex, I want to go to you because you're obviously our minor league guy here. So the Yankees, okay, that seems like a good option because, like Hector mentioned, they can dish out a bunch of money. They're in a place where it would be a good idea for them to keep Marte around for a few more years. What kind of offer could the Yankees make the Marlins? I know that the farm system isn't really what it usually is when you talk about New York. So, is Clint Frazier involved? He's always a name that's floated out there at deadline time. So what could we see from the Yankees? You're muted.
You're muted.
Carver, you're muted.
My bad. Jeez. Okay. You asked about what we could get back from New York.
The Yankees. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the answer that I would come up with would be similar to what Hector just said. Whereas I think the Yankees would know that they're probably done this year, unless they go on like a ridiculous run. I think they're probably done. They're getting Marte. What can you get back? The name that I would 100% want included in that trade is Esteban Florial. That's major league ready. That's a center fielder that's here right now. He can probably play all 3 spots, but his majority of the time is spent in center field. So that's the guy that I want 100% if you're trading with New York. Past that, I guess the only other name in terms of minor leaguers that I would look at in terms of needs for the Marlins is Austin Wells, I think, is the catcher that they want.
Austin Wells. I was just looking at him right now. Yep.
Yeah. Other than that, from what we can get out of their system, it's not a lot, honestly. It's arms, probably mid-tier arms mostly. So, yeah, if you could get Florial, if you could get Wells, that's the 2 names you want. If it's going to be cash-based and it has to be an older guy, which I wouldn't necessarily want. We know the Marlins and money, and that would be attractive. But I think that would be the last direction that they want to go. I think they want, right now, younger guys, like we just said. So if you're going to deal with the Yankees, that's who you want. But past them, if they say no on them, I don't know. Honestly, that's why I said before, I don't like that team as a partner, but we'll see.
Isaac, who do you like as a partner for the Marlins?
Philadelphia kind of intrigued me a little bit. I think, they have some younger guys, some recent draft picks that could be of, like that the Marlins could want for sure. But other than that, I think the Giants all the way. You definitely would have to sweeten the pot a little bit. Marte alone won't get it done. The Yankees, like you said, they would be willing to extend Marte 100%. And you extend him, he replaces Hicks for a while, you say, and they would be willing to give you Florial for 3 years of Marte. Let's say if they extend him to that. But other than that, I would say the Giants, the Phillies would be two teams that I think could make a nice little package deal for Marte. But again, you would have to either like pay for the rest of the season of Marte or do something to really maximize the return for sure.
I don't even know what the Phillies deal would look like. Does anybody have an idea? Because I don't know too much about that.
I saw people throwing Bryson Scott's name in there, but I don't think Bryce Harper lets them get rid of him, as much as that'd be nice. But who knows? I don't know if they want to get rid of Mickey Moniak or someone like that, some major league ready sort of center fielder. But by the way, just to answer your question that you asked, no, I think it's preposterous that he's starting in center field today. I think that is just playing with fire, and I don't agree with that at all.
Yeah.
Especially with the injury luck they've had this season.
No,
Seriously.
And this center field wall, it's short, it's easy to rob home runs. I would not have him in center field against the Baltimore Orioles when you're 14 games under 500 on July 27th. So that's
exactly how much more value can you get? Like, I think Noah said, if you have assets, play them. The Marlins aren't going to get anything more out of him. Like, if you lose him, you're screwed. You get nothing. So
he's a known commodity. He's a known commodity. Know what he is.
That's a mistake. If he's available to Mattingly, Mattingly's going to play the guy. And per what he said to Mish, that the organization hasn't said anything. So Mattingly's going to play the guy. But I think from an organizational standpoint, that's a big mistake.
Yeah, I think that an 0 for 4 is going to go a longer way in changing his value than a 4 for 4 with 4 home runs would.
I mean, it's not like Williams,
by the way, my
400 at the end of the season, and like the guy's wanting to play. Like, he doesn't need to play.
By the way, my answer was not from the organizational perspective. It was from the he's available to play him.
Of course. And
like,
of course,
from Mattingly's perspective.
Just like Alex just said, if he's available, you're going to play him because Mattingly's going to do everything he can to win a ball game night in, night out. And from a fan perspective, from a baseball watcher perspective, of course you want to watch Starling Marte play baseball. I tweeted the other day that I'm just going to miss watching him play. It's just from a baseball fan perspective, you love watching Starling Marte play because he just moves the runner over at the right time. He makes the great catch in left center field. He gets the base hit when he needs it. He's just a fun player to watch play. So Kevin,
if he goes to the Yankees, we get him for the next series too.
Yeah, that would be fun. If he just
I'm not saying he should be playing at all. He should be DHing. Come on.
Yeah.
Definitely be in the lineup.
Even that runs the risk, because I mean he's already been hurt at the plate this season, and I think
and last
the
year in
two
the
times
playoffs,
he's been hurt, it's been at the plate, not been defensively. And you just called up Lewin, so you got to get him playing time because you just got him here. So it would just be, I think it would be best, and they might not play him tomorrow because of the, they're probably going to be like, what? Maybe we shouldn't play this guy if we're going to try to trade him because. Yeah. Like I said, the Marlins, just in Major League Baseball in general has been, hit hard with the injury bug. So I wouldn't, like, if I was the Marlins, I would just tell them, like, hey, you know what? You could probably just stay home in Miami and start packing your bags, all right? You're not going to play, bud. Thank you for your time here.
Kevin,
just to drive home the point that Isaac just made about Camden Yards, I just looked at it. How many games has Starling Marte played at Camden Yards? As he said, it's kind of an odd outfield with a short wall and everything. He's played 2 games there. So it's a mistake. I don't like it. Anyways.
Kevin, going back to just what you want to see the Marlins get for Marte, who can kind of make that best offer? It seems like the Giants are kind of who we're all leaning towards, but how do you think the Marlins could approach that deal? Obviously you might have to throw in Floro or somebody, but when you're looking at these deals, in terms of value, the Marlins would have to give up besides just Marte. Is the Giants one the only one where you're looking at is, okay, they might have to give something else up?
Yeah, most likely. That's maybe one of the only teams. Maybe the Yankees, if the Yankees want a lot more than they're asked, that, they're just asking for a lot. I mean, that might be the only other team that they're giving up both Wells and Florial in the deal, which I highly doubted, but no, I think the Giants are the team that I want to see him get a trading into because of the return we could get back. Helio Ramos, who is almost MLB ready, I could think. Joey Bart, probably one of the biggest needs the Marlins have right now is a catcher. It's just the needs that the Marlins have, and San Francisco has it right there waiting for them. Yeah, you might have to give up Floro, But Flora's a good pitcher or a good reliever, better said, and he's probably going to help that team more than he's going to help the Marlins. So may as well just get rid of those guys that are going to help out right now and make a move to get young guys that are going to help you out probably for the second half of this season, or play them in minor leagues, whatever you want. But San Francisco's the spot to look at.
And you might catch the Giants, want to be aggressive because the Giants, they're always trying to win, and they are, a world-class-like organization. They're going to try their best to win. They're in it right now against over the Padres and the Dodgers. They're going to, you might catch them saying, hey, you know what, fine, we'll give you Heliot Ramos, give us Marte and a reliever and ship it out. So the Giants, I would be like waiting back and waiting for them to call because they could use a center fielder.
I think this could be one of the more, mutually beneficial trades that you look at the deadline. This move makes so much sense for both teams. And like you said, Isaac, the Giants they're just great. They're awesome. Like the way that they work and the way that they went from, the last couple years have been such a struggle, and now all of a sudden they're World Series contenders right again after everything that they've been through. And look, they need bullpen help as much as anybody. They need bullpen help really bad. They're top 10 in blown saves. Their bullpen doesn't have that much talent. They've kind of put the pieces together, and I'm looking at this and I'm saying, if I'm the Giants, even if you can't get Starling Marte, I was thinking before I realized they needed Marte, I'm like, why are they not on the phone with the Marlins right now talking about Blyer, talking about Floro, talking about this one, talking about that one? Because they need bullpen help, and every contender needs bullpen help. And that's why I think it makes so much sense to trade him to, obviously to a contender, but to make this trade with the Giants, because it would just be so mutually beneficial for both teams. So, I don't know. I haven't seen a lot of steam about it picking up really. And I haven't seen, like I said earlier, a lot of steam with any of these teams. So when it's all said and done, let's go around and when this is all finally comes to a conclusion, Hector, I'll start with you. Where do you think Starling Marte is playing baseball on July 31st?
I'm going to go with the Giants, and plain simple, I think the Giants are going to be the most aggressive, and they're going to be willing to give the most because we don't know if they're going to be good next year. This might be just a one-time thing, especially with how old their lineup is. So they might just be like, hey, we might not be able to be this good again, especially with how good the Dodgers and the Padres are going to get much better. Yeah. So the Giants need, especially with the Padres already getting this guy Frazier, and now they might be getting a Max Scherzer or a different type arm. Hey, you know what? We need to make a splash, even if it, our future, forget our future. Let's try to win a damn World Series now, because our immediate future might not be great. Joey Bart, yeah, you know what? We love you. But they have another catcher in their farm system. I know he's not producing that well, but Patrick Bailey, who was a first-round pick out of NC State, they have that guy as a fallback plan. And look, I think you can get him. I think the Marlins can trade Marte, let's say a Blyer, a Floro, maybe even a John Curtis. And you know what? If you need to throw like a pitching prospect in there just to sweeten the pot a little bit, maybe do it. Maybe trade away a guy like Kyle Nicholas, a guy that has some potential, but I'm not. We're not sure because he's still. I think he just got called up to Double A, and the Marlins have an embarrassment of riches when it comes to pitching in their farm system. So if you give up a guy like Kyle Nicholas, it's not even going to really hurt you. So but you really need catchers, and that's why I think Joey Bart can be an immediate answer, and then you could trade away Alfaro for maybe throw him in the damn offer. Who knows? Yeah, here's the throw and just a backup Posey.
Yeah, and somebody in the comments had your exact idea, Marte, Blyer, and Nicholas. When I drafted up an offer, I think that Marte, Floro, and maybe a guy like Braxton Garrett you could float around out there. I saw there was a rumor earlier this year that the Marlins could be interested in a guy like Garrett. And like you said, Hector, we know about this Marlins embarrassment of riches, and if they are serious about getting better at the plate, they're going to have to use their pitching surplus to get something. And we're going to go into that because I do want to talk about, this obviously everybody's all excited about the possibility of the Marlins acquiring a bat. So I want to get into that. But Isaac, all is said and done. Where is Marte playing ball next week?
What Craig says, once names are exchanged, that's when something is going to happen. So unfortunately, I would like to see him maybe go somewhere else, but I think the Giants is as well. I think that as well. I agree with Hector. I think that's where he ends up playing on July 30th. I think they're going to put together a package I don't think they're going to get rid of Bart. They're going to need to throw in either Meyer Eater for that. I don't think
Interesting.
Nicholas and Marte would get that job done for Bart. Number 2 overall pick just a couple of years ago. So
Yeah.
I think they're going to try and acquire Heliot Ramos, just like Craig said on the article. And we'll see how it goes. It wouldn't be like my favorite return, obviously, but I think that's where he ends up going to San Francisco.
Yeah, Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd love to be different, but I think I have to agree with both Hector and Isaac and say that it's got to be San Francisco, just because, as we've been talking about, and I've been saying a couple times now since we've talked about Marte for like 4 weeks straight, or at least, it's probably going to be San Francisco, just because they have the most to draw from right now, or pretty much right now ready minor leaguers. I do kind of agree with Isaac that even though they say they will deal Joey Bart, the asking price for him may be a little bit too much, because the Marlins aren't going to trade, top 5 prospects. They're not going to get rid of Eater. They're not going to get rid of Meyer. They're not going to get rid of Edward Cabrera. Like those guys they're not going to trade. So then you look at it and you go, okay, who can we deal with and get, a decent right now ready prospect back for, by just giving up Marte and an arm, most likely a left-handed arm, maybe Braxton, as you said, Ethan, maybe Richard Blyer would be another one that I would say would go. So yeah, I think it's going to be the Giants. I think the return will be, as Craig has been talking about, Heliot Ramos. That's the guy they'll target. And yeah, that's what I think they'll do at the end of the day. And yeah, well, I mean, that's what I hope for, at least. We'll see.
Yeah.
This market is, like we've been talking about, it's really not good right now to sell, and teams know where the Marlins are at on Marte. So it'll be just getting the best return, and I think the Giants provide that.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, I lost my train of thought. I'm going to try and get it back. While Kevin, you tell us where you think the Marte is going.
Yeah, I think we're all in the same boat here. He's gonna go. I think he goes to the Giants. It's the possible best, one of the better returns the Marlins could get. You get the center fielder you want. You could possibly get the catcher you need for your future. It's just the best return. And I know I saw in the betting odds that the Dodgers were up there. I'm not gonna say they're gonna get him, but there's a sneaky team in there. I think it could maybe be the Dodgers dealing Keibert Ruiz, who's one of those catchers that I think the Marlins would like.
It would have to be a huge sweetener again. Yeah.
Yeah,
That would be so dope, man.
Yeah, it would be sick.
Ruiz.
No, it would be sick. They would have to sweeten it a lot, But yeah, I mean,
but Dodgers could be one of those sneaky teams. They want to make a run to the division. They probably don't. I don't think any team wants to be in that wild card spot like the Dodgers or Padres. They probably want to be in first place. They probably can't believe the Giants are in first place right now. But make a move, get Marte, and possibly try to go for first place in that division. That's one of my sneaky teams. But I think the Giants get Marte. They have the possible player. They just have what the Marlins want right now.
Yeah, and you talked about it, like whoever wins that wild card game between the two NL West teams is just gonna have to go to whoever's house wins the division, and you definitely don't want to do that. And Alex, you mentioned how they might not, they're not going to trade Eater, they're not going to trade Meyer. I think they're not going to do that for a guy that's not MLB ready. But if you want to talk about one of the big bats that they might be in play for, I think that's where those guys could come into play.
Yeah.
And I would be willing to talk about that, and we're going to get to that in a second. I think he goes to the Giants as well. I think it's mutually beneficial for both. But Eli, I want you to come in here because on the pod you mentioned the Phillies, and everybody seems to be overlooking the Phillies. So I want you to talk to us about. Offer a different perspective and talk to us about why you think the Phillies make so much sense for the Marlins and, for Marte going to the Phillies as well.
So I don't necessarily think it makes a whole lot of sense head to head. I think Marte is a really solid candidate for a 3-team trade as this deadline comes up. For the Phillies, it makes a ton of sense because they have been awful in center field all year. I mean, they've had a bunch of different guys kind of rotating in there, and for the most part, it's been Odubel Herrera, who is a garbage player and probably a garbage human being, and they need to upgrade there. They are run by Dave Dombrowski, and he is, through all his jobs, he's super aggressive at the deadline, and he's already making a couple moves to this point already. In fact, as we're recording this, I think one of his moves just got broken up by somebody doesn't even understand why. He's trying to acquire a pitcher from the Pirates, and the deal kind of fell through at the last minute, but he's already making moves a few days prior to the deadline. I think they still have some financial flexibility before they hit that luxury tax threshold. And for them, they have some long-term deals that are getting in the way. I don't know if they'd be interested in re-signing Marte, but he would obviously be a great fit for them, like down the stretch. As you've alluded to, the Phillies farm system is, there's no generous way to put it. It's like one of the worst in baseball. So I don't know if there's any there's not any individual guy that you love. One name that maybe makes some sense is Bryson Stott, who 2019 first-round draft pick. He was drafted after Blade, and he has frankly outperformed Blade. Now to this point in their major league career, he plays up the middle. He's nothing super special, but a pretty high floor guy. I just think that Marte is a great candidate for a 3-team trade. Even if they don't like anything in the Philly system, get another team involved. It could be essentially anybody, any system that they feel has this other like prospect or prospects that really get the Marlins excited. And because as we've mentioned, the Marlins have so many additional chips to move at this deadline, so many veteran relievers and so many controllable pitching prospects. So those are the guys that the Marlins could send to that third team in order to get back that headliner prospect that you can't get directly from the Phillies. So I'll stop it there. But that's my thinking, that the Phillies are desperate and that they're desperate enough to like rope in a third team to make it work.
No, it's pretty interesting, and like you said, Dombrowski is as aggressive as it gets. You know, we know about him in his time with the Marlins and the Red Sox and the Tigers and elsewhere. I mean, he's one of the most successful GMs of a generation, and it has to do with the fact that he's always aggressive and he's always throwing money around. So, it's gonna be fun. And like I said, I think I said this on our trade deadline podcast, and I said this earlier. I'm just excited for a resolution to come about. It's been such a saga. It's been, who's going where, how's it going to happen, and
Dombrowski's not scared of trading prospects.
Yeah.
He will trade Bryson Scott. Bryce Harper might not. I know they're Las Vegas buddies, but Dombrowski. Oh yeah, you want Bryson Scott? Go ahead. For a right now contender, the Braves are most likely leaning towards selling, and all you got is the Mets. Nationals are going to be selling. All you have is the Mets to deal with. So maybe the Phillies maybe Eli's onto something. Maybe the Phillies really do like sweeten the pot and give us Bryson Scott. 1-for-1 would be fair in my eyes. Maybe throw in like someone else for the Phillies, but a good one.
They should be aggressive because they're in it. They're a team that can make a run in the second half.
Yeah.
With Harper and their three-headed monster pitching and all that stuff. They can absolutely make a run if they get aggressive. Hector, you were saying?
I also think if the Marlins do a trade with the Phillies for Marte, they got to be kind of a little ridiculous. It's got to be a offer that they can refuse, because you don't want to trade within your division.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we've already seen it with JT, and Sixto's been nice when he's been up, but we haven't seen Sixto this year, and JT has been awesome, as we all expect. He's the best catcher in baseball. So if the Marlins are going to do a trade with the Phillies, they're going to be asking for Bryson, and they're going to be asking for some other top prospects, because they don't have a great farm system. It's not like they have their 13 guy would be a top 5 guy in some other farm systems. No, their 13 guy is probably not even in the top 30 in the Marlins farm system. I don't know much about their farm system, but that's just my thoughts on their farm system. And I just look at it, I was like, man, like the Marlins have to be, if it's the Phillies, you have to push them to the brink, because at your own division, and you're gonna make him make an uncomfortable decision if they do make that trade. If not, don't worry about it. You got other options, But if you're gonna trade within your own division, I'm asking, if I'm Kim, I'm asking for a bunch. And if not, I'm perfectly okay. Exactly. And Bryson's the headliner. That's just my thoughts.
And the Marlins in the past, they don't really mind going in the division. Obviously, with the Phillies example you already mentioned, but they were going to trade him to the Braves. They were going to, there's other teams in the division that they were looking to deal with. So I don't think Jeter really cares about that.
I've said this before, that they were in a different position with JT, where they weren't competing for a while, so they just wanted to get the best return. But I think now all of a sudden they're looking and they're saying, we might be able to compete next year. We want to compete next year. Kind of need to compete next year. And I think that might change the thinking when it comes to trading in the division. But the next thing I want to talk about, we have so much, to get to, and 6:05 or 7:05 or 7:10 is first pitch, so we've got plenty of time. But the next thing I want to talk about is the other names, where else the Marlins can go. And the first one that I want to talk about is Adam Duvall, because I think this is probably the most interesting situation that you have, with a player right now, where been very productive, could be very productive in your 2022 lineup, and if he leaves a huge hole, right? But he's got this mutual option. You don't know if he's going to pick it up. You have to be 100% confident that he's going to pick it up if you decide to hold on to him, because you could probably get a pretty good return for him. He's been, like I said, he's been productive. teams can always use a power bat at this time of year, and nobody hits it out of the ballpark as well as Adam Duvall, and we obviously know he's one of the best run producers in the National League this year, and any team can use that. And he plays great right field defense as well. That's something else that I've kind of brushed over when I talked about Duvall a lot, but he plays great right field defense as well. Kevin, when you look at Duvall and you look at where the Marlins are at and you look at the contract situation, everything going on around him, what would you do with Duvall personally? What do you think benefits the Marlins best?
Duvall has this thing where he goes on an absolute monstrous hitting streak, and then he goes cold for like a couple weeks, and then he comes back. It's on and off for Adam Duvall. And then my question is, if you trade him, who's coming up? Brian Miller? That's maybe one of the only options I would think that comes up. Or you play Nags and Lewis Brinson. I would. It just depends what that. If he accepts the option, I'm not trading him because this guy could be one of the best hitters on our 2022 lineup for sure. That's not going to be a good year for the Marlins whatsoever. Look, seeing how things are right now and how they're going to unfold, it's not looking good. But if the price is right and you got at least some good AA prospects, go ahead and trade him. If you get some good maybe top 30, top 40 prospects, go trade him. Why not? I mean, might as well get the value that he has on him right now. So yeah, I mean, if I'm the Marlins, I personally wouldn't trade him because I think he could help the team in the second half of the season. But seeing how things are, he could possibly get traded.
And there are rumors that the Marlins have been having talks about him, so it's a very real possibility. So, Isaac, I know you've been the trade everybody guy, kind of. So I want to go to you here. What are your thoughts on the Duvall situation?
Well, when it comes to everyone, I'm not that extreme, but Marte.
No, I know.
With Duvall,
a lot of these veterans, you kind of
Right.
want to see them capitalize on the value, is
Right.
what I'm saying. So,
well, like you said, Duvall is so interesting because the mutual option just makes it because you would like him in your 22 lineup ideally, right? And he could net a decent return. So I would say call the Yankees, call the Blue Jays, call a team that could maybe use some power bats, see what they would offer you. If they give you Esteban Florial, I think you pull the trigger.
Oh no, yeah.
But other than that, you have to be careful with trading Duvall. But I think since the Marlins are really reluctant, it appears, to trade Miggy as well as Aguilar, those are the two offensive players you have to trade, and those are the ones with the most value that you can get back. So it gets to the point where they better be sure that you have some offense for next year. I don't know. We'll get to this later about trading a Max Meyer or Jake Eder for us, a really major league ready center fielder. But if you're going to trade Duvall, you have to be certain that you're going to get someone. Not in this particular trade, but in a different trade, they're going to have someone to replace him in his production, at least.
I'm not really sure what kind of value they could get for Duvall. There hasn't been a lot of value. There hasn't been a lot of rumors about what his value is, how highly he's coveted, who's in on him. There's just been, the Marlins have engaged in talks or whatever. And like I said, there hasn't been a trade partner floated out there. I imagine that Craig Mish will come in, in a little while or so and just kind of start updating us on where they are with each team and who each guy and who's kind of talking where. But I haven't seen a team floated around about Duvall. So Hector, how do you think the Marlins can get pretty good value for Duvall, and what do you think? Because again, he's been a pretty productive hitter, 107 weighted runs created plus. We know about the strikeouts. They've dropped over the year. He's still only hitting 233, but, the 22 home runs and the 68 RBIs, he's obviously very productive run producer. So when you look at Duvall, you want that guy in your 2022 lineup, but how much of a gamble is it to hold on to the guy not knowing that if he'll agree to the mutual option or not?
Well, if the Marlins are already fielding offers, then they probably don't feel great about him coming back for another year because it's a mutual. I mean, I imagine the Marlins would want him back because he's been everything we've expected to be, maybe even a little bit more, because I don't think anybody expected him to be such a good defensive player, and he's been great defensively, but no one really expected him to hit high for average. Everyone knew he was going to be at best a 240 hitter, but if he hits home runs and he drives in runs, that's what you paid him for. And teams, I think if you do trade him, you have to look at Duvall and ask him, hey, is this a team that you would, I think teams would call maybe Duvall's agent and say, hey, how would Duvall feel about playing for us next season? Because we know he has that mutual option. Could that work out for next season? Because he's kind of cheap for a guy that can hit 30 home runs, $7 million next season. I think I think that's getting a lot of value for somebody that can play great defense. He runs the ball. He runs pretty well, and he hit the crap out of the baseball. He's a 30 home run threat every season, and he could drive in about 80 to 90 runs. So, I think you can get some good value here if it's the right team. If Duvall looks at a team and he's like, yeah, you know what? I think if in the right situation, I would commit to that team for a second year, then I think his value immediately goes up because at that point, you kind of already know he's not a rental. He has another year in him.
Yeah.
And with the production he has showed in the past few seasons, the type of power that he has, and let me tell you this, he's showing that type of power in one of the most pitcher-friendly ballparks.
Yep.
So let's say you send him to a team like, you know what, Boston might, for some reason Boston gets him. I'm not sure why, but Fenway Park's going to play really nice for him. He's going to hit a ton of bombs completely over the monster. So that could be an option where Duvall is like, you know what, this ballpark fits really well in what I do best. This team's going to be competitive. They're going to spend the money. And you know what? I like the city. I like my teammates. I think I'm going to stick. I think I want to be here. And maybe at that point he's a DH over there in the American League. Even though he does play good defense, I don't know who the right fielder is. But
Verdugo.
I thought Verdugo played left.
Yeah, he plays left
switches.
now.
Oh, I'm sorry about
He's
that.
played all around the outfield. He's played all around.
But
the
Duvall
outfield,
has played some center field though. Duvall has played some center field this season, and I think the Red Sox need somebody in center field. So if that's the case, maybe Duvall can play center field for them, hit a ton of home runs, and play good defense, and throw out a couple base runners. So I feel like the Red Sox, and their farm system's pretty decent, so they could probably get a nice package for him.
Tristan
they're not
Costa.
Trust me, I know that kid's family. If he came to Miami, Louis, I'm sorry, Bobble, but you're gone because that kid swings looks like Freddie Freeman, and he's actually we wouldn't even be able to get him because he's in Tokyo for the
USA.
Olympics. He's their cleanup hitter. He's their cleanup hitter in a lineup full of with Todd Frazier and a couple other guys. So
Matt Kemp.
I'm surprised we chose Connor Scott over him that draft, man.
Yeah,
that was so surprising. I thought that would have bought a lot of love for the fans. Like, hey, they drafted a hometown guy. And I even think Fasario said, like, hey, the Marlins should really consider.
Fasaro's
and I think
Fasario was all over Tristan.
Yeah,
Casas.
I think his son's a scout
so
too, and they were pointing at like, hey, Tristan. But let me tell you this: besides Tristan Power, the thing that impresses me the most with him, because I've seen that kid play since he was little, and he went to Heritage. My brother played at McCarthy, so we saw him about 2 to 3 times a season. His play discipline, because teams would try to like nitpick him, but they weren't trying to walk him. They were just trying to force sweet contact. If it wasn't something that he could send into over their houses in right field, he wouldn't swing. He just had such a great play, such a great eye, such great play discipline, and he was super advanced for his age, especially in that department. And then when you add the hit tool, the power, I don't care if you could run your damn first baseman. And I don't even know why the Red Sox even tried him at third. That was dumb. But yeah, you're not getting Tristan or Jeter Downs or Durand. It's going to be a lower level guy, but a guy with some potential, a little bit of his high ceiling. But at that point, the Marlins are going to have to work with him and try to develop him to being the best player as possible.
Maybe Marte plus Duvall get to one of those guys.
Crazy. That would be crazy.
Jeter Downs could be fun. He's got some power, but I don't think he's had the best season. But this whole season, a lot of minors could have struggled.
I just remember that Connor Scott, Tristan Casas draft was the Jonathan India draft as well.
Yeah,
and I was just hoping, when
and Singer,
initially,
Singer had
and initially, India was projected in the Marlins range, and then he had such a good senior year that he shot all the way up the board. But Alex Carter, I want to come to you. With Duvall, you got to be 100% certain that he would want to be here next year for you to not trade him, right? And then when you look around, who do you think is a good partner for the Marlins for Duvall?
Yeah. I mean, he's got to go somewhere where, like, okay, they know that he's going to sign, and I'm sure that internally, that conversations have been had about that. Hey, if we bring you back next year, what are you thinking? Like, what do you think about the direction of the club? Like, we've asked him ourselves. Of course, he's going to say something maybe different to them than he is to us. But that's where you're at. You got to see where he is on what he thinks about the opportunity for this team to win next year, because this guy's 32 years old. He's not got a ton of years left. He wants to win baseball games. So is that going to be with the Marlins in 2022? They're going to have to sell that. Personally, I think they have to sell that. Have they sold it? I personally don't think so, because as you guys have said, we're hearing his name brought up. If they were 100% certain that he was going to have that deal, and come back next year and agree to that option, they're not going to create another hole. They don't have
Maybe
anything in the
even
minor leagues.
maybe even
You're right.
60%. It doesn't have to be 100. If they were
Right.
more confident in him staying than
Yeah.
leaving, and I think a lot of it has to do with
Yeah.
like, fuck guys, I thought you were going to be a little bit more competitive. I
Right.
saw you in the playoffs,
Yeah.
and now you suck. Let's face
Yeah.
it, we suck.
They would not create another hole in the outfield with what they have in the minor leagues if they were 100 or at least 60, 65, as Hector just said. Sure, that Duvall could come back, but I think it says a lot that you're hearing his name brought up, that we're talking about him right now. I don't think it's that close. I personally don't. So where could he go that is the best case scenario for the Marlins? The only team that I was really looking at, and they're pretty much out on Marte. From everything that I hear from people that I talk to, I have a couple people that I talk to that I really trust that are kind of connected to these things when it comes to deadlines and trades and stuff like that, which of course is the huge talking point, as we know. From what I hear, that the Astros don't have what it takes. The minor league system just doesn't have it. The Marlins aren't interested in what they're offering, and whatever they're asking for may be too much. So that's the system that I would look at and say, okay, maybe this would be a good fit because they have Corey Lee. That's a catcher with a cannon arm. Like, go watch his highlights, guys. Like, Double-A this year, that guy is just amazing with the arm. The hit tool is pretty good. He's hitting this year in Double-A. He probably could be here next year. So that could be a guy kind of bridge the gap to the guy we just got in the draft with Joe Mack. That could be a good place to go. I agree with Hector as well that I think that the return is not going to be fantastic because there's so much uncertainty with him with the player option. And he's 32, as we just said. So, I think it would be a lower tier return. Maybe B-type prospects, like I just said, Corey Lee would be a good one. The Astros would be my one pick, but it sucks that we're hearing his name brought up because if we were sure that he would come back, we wouldn't be hearing it.
And it's funny, Adam Duvall is actually about a month older than Starling Marte. And I hadn't realized that, but that's a funny thing. But with Duvall, the other factor is, okay, you keep him around, but he might want more money next year. He might want a completely new deal because he was supposed to get, a lot more money than the Marlins gave him last year on the free agent market. Teams might have held out because they say, okay, maybe, 60-game wonder. But now he's hit 22 home runs and driven in 68 RBIs with 60 games left in the season. And he might be looking at, I want to get paid. I want to get a big deal. So he could get some money on the open market, and he could be looking at that. And so, yeah, I kind of think the Marlins have to ship Duvall again. I don't know where they would go with him, and it opens up another hole that could be problematic. But the next subject I want to go to is how do the Marlins fill that hole, right? So there's obviously this big report that comes out from Craig Mish, gets everybody all excited. And the one thing I want to remind everybody is he said it could be at the deadline. It could also be in the winter. Yeah. So if something doesn't happen at the deadline, don't freak out because the Marlins will probably be looking to make a lot of moves this winter because we know that there's going to be probably a good amount of holes on this team coming up, and Duvall would open another one. So I want to talk to you guys about how you would like to fill these holes. And this is a discussion we could have for 30 minutes, but we're starting to run into like 10, 15-minute mark. So let's just, the names that he threw out. So he kind of talked about, okay, they want this athletic, under control, center fielder, pretty good track record. So the 4 names I've come up with, and he mentioned a couple of these, and then I come up with 2 more, are Byron Buxton, Cedric Mullins, Brian Reynolds, and Ketel Marte. I think those are the 4 guys that you could be looking at that profile the way that Mish kind of set up, where this is what the Marlins could be looking for. Obviously in this scenario, I think this is a scenario, Alex, where you talk about where they would be willing to move on from a Jake Eder or a Max Meyer. I think Eddie Cabrera, personally, I think he's untouchable. I don't think they're giving up on him, but I think Meyer, Eder, definitely one of the other 2020 draft picks. This is where you start using that surplus of arms really to capitalize on value and get a guy like Brian Reynolds, Buxton, whatever. So, Hector, I see you itching. Where do you think the Marlins should go? Who's a guy you think really could be in play? Who sets up the guy where you don't have to give up the most value, but you get the most in return? Or what kind of value would be, just talk to us about what you think about this scenario.
Well, one thing that we do know is the Pirates do want younger prospects because they're not going to be competitive for anytime soon. So the Marlins do have a lot of really good ones. And I know, you don't want to trade Salazar or Yidi Cape, but there's other young guys. Yuri Perez could be an option. Yuri has looked awesome. He has very fluent most pitching motion for a guy with his size and how young he is. That could be an interesting guy. That could be a top 100 prospect. Maybe next year, depending what level he's at and what type of production he's joined. But another player that I would be interested in if I were the Marlins, and this would be a deal I would do in the winter. Ramon Laureano.
Ooh.
I would like
Yeah.
Ramon Laureano. I look at him. I see Gold Glove type arm. Look, we have a big center field. Laureano can cover that ground. Power bag, he's not going to hit for average. He's probably, maybe you get him 250, 260 out of him, but he's going to hit for power. He's going to play great defense. He's going to be very fast. He's going to steal a lot of bags for you. He could be your leadoff guy, a leadoff type player, or a middle of the order, probably like a fifth batter, a guy that with runners on can drive into runs. But I was looking at Laureano, like I was like, man, why are people talking about Ramon Laureano? And we know the A's don't pay guys, and I know the A's are still competing for the playoffs, so this would not be a deadline move. This would probably be a move like, hey, let's go get a guy. But Ketel Marte could be an awesome pickup because he's on a cheaper contract, so it'd be more financially. It'd be a financially better move for the Marlins because you're not going to have to pay that guy a ton of money like a Byron Buxton. Plus, Buxton comes with huge injury concerns. Marte's had some injuries this season, but I don't think he's had a lot of injuries throughout his career. Plus, he has some defensive versatility. So let's say you want another outfielder to play. Okay, you know what? Jazz needs a day off. Okay, you can go play second, and Marte can go play second. We'll throw another outfielder. Maybe not Mags or Lewis Brinson, but somebody else at this point. But I like Ketel Marte. Brian Reynolds would have to be the biggest one. Would be the biggest return. And the Marlins have a lot of good young prospects. So if they want to give up young guys, like let's say like a guy like Max Myers, like no, I don't know how far along we'll be until he starts hitting arbitration, or a guy like Eater. Maybe they would loosen it a little bit for a guy like Giri Capé, Jose Salasas, Ian Lewis, those type of prospects. Or even if you could trade your 2021 guys, maybe a Joe Mack if you already answer the catcher position, I don't know. It's just something that I thought would be interesting, but I do love Ramon Laureano. I think he's a hell of a player.
It's an option. It's an option I hadn't thought of, and it makes sense under the constraints of what they're looking for, young and controllable. And Reynolds is under control until 2026. That's a crazy number for a guy, of his quality. And
you're gonna have to trade an arm and a leg, and maybe even a kidney.
Yeah, it would be a king's ransom, and it would definitely include a Meyer or an Eater and one of your better bats. But Isaac, when you look at the options that the Marlins have, which one interests you, and do you think it happens at the deadline, or do you think it's more likely to happen in the winter?
The Major League Ready center fielder will happen in the offseason, I assume.
Yes.
100%.
I think you get the catcher. Sorry for cutting you off, Isaac, but I think the catcher can be – because even like maybe a Jacob Stallings, a guy who can immediately help your pitching staff, and also he's not great offensively. I mean, let's face it, there's you can't get much worse offensively with Alfaro. You definitely can get much better defensively with Alfaro. And Jacobs might be a Gold Glove contender. I think he's one of the favorites right now for Gold Glove. So, Isaac, sorry, but I thought because I remember Miss Shed in the they're probably going to try to make a move for center field or catcher at the deadline, maybe both. But I think the catcher is probably the easier one. It's either going to be Joey Barr, maybe a Mitch Garver from the Twins.
That's another one I thought about.
Mitch Garver for the Twins, and Jacob Stallings. I mean, we've heard that name for a while. I even thought I was bored at the press box, like 40 minutes before a game. I was like, all right, Jacob Stallings trade. Here you go.
Yeah. Isaac.
To answer your question, for the Major League Center field, Byron Buxton, that's a pipe dream. Like, boy, would I love that face of the franchise type player to be, patrolling our center fielder for a long time. He just turned down $80 million. So I think that's going to be a little bit out of our budget, unfortunately. But you could get their catcher, like Hector mentioned. Mitch Garver could be an option, maybe even at the trade deadline or in the offseason. But in the offseason, a name that would intrigue me would be Cedric Mullins. I know he was mentioned as well, but he's the guy. The Marlins like making moves with the Orioles a little bit. They've done it in the past. So he might be someone. I think that would be an offseason move where it might be, Jake Eater. There's people that say that Eater might be a better prospect than Meyer at this point. I don't know. I think it's too early to tell. But one of those guys, or McCambly and Nicholas combined, but they're going to have to be creative with their surplus of pitching to get a guy like Mullins or a guy of, the same caliber of Buxton.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody recently who said that, basically Eater has just projects better than Meyer, and Meyer's really going to have to work on that changeup to top Eater. Alex, I know you love these prospects, and I know you don't want to see any of them go, but which option interests you the most if they were to move on from one of those bigger names?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it comes down to a simple fact that the one guy that is very, very, very likely from everything that we see in him and everything that I hear, and we talk to people and we hear names that are mentioned and names that are not. I think if you're talking about bringing back major league ready talent, one of the only guys that would be, you don't trade him or they're not going to trade him, is Max Meyer. I think that's probably the guy that will not get traded no matter what. Past that, if they can get Cedric Mullins and Jake Eater's name is in there, Jake Eater's name was mentioned in trades this past season, and the Marlins said no, not because of him, but because of other pieces. But they actually almost moved him for bullpen help. So, as much as it would suck to see him go with how he's broken out and what he has, it's a name that is possible to go. It would take a guy that we're talking about, though. Cedric Mullins. Buxton's not going to happen. I agree with Isaac. Laureano's interesting, as Hector just mentioned. The guy that I would look at and say, if he keeps doing what he's doing the rest of this season, he's been great this season. But is he playing over his head? That's the question. Is Cedric Mullins, and we know that Craig mentioned that name, but that's a guy that's under control for a long time. Really good center fielder, plays right now, steps right in, takes up that position, and shores it up for the future. You can leave Blade and Burdick in the corners. You don't have to force that position on them. So, yeah, that would be a guy, if we are going to deal these top-tier prospects, and I would be okay with it, it would definitely be Orioles, and it would be Cedric Mullins. That would be the one name that I would say, okay, I'm good with letting Jake Eater go for that piece. So we'll see. That's a good conversation, though.
A lot of these guys have, issues that come along with it, concerns, track record issues. Mullins didn't hit a ton in the minors. This year is a great year, but there's the fear that it's a one-off, like you said. Right. But it's a really, really great year. And then,
with what we have,
Buxton injury issues, you would take it over what the Marlins have right now, and it would just breathe some life into it. Now, Kevin, we're short on time, but real quickly, who interests you the most here, and do you think it happens, like I asked Isaac earlier, at the deadline or in the winter?
So any major league player, I think, would be in the winter. Doesn't make sense now in the deadline when they're in sell mode. Not at all. Unless it's like a Mitch Garver and you grab him in the deadline. And no, I don't really care if you grab Mitch Garver in the deadline. Might as well. Most realistic option, I think, is Cedric Mullins. I think you guys are right on that one. The dream option would be Byron Buxton, and the one in the mid, and the one that you say, that could be Ketel Marte. But Mullins is great. He had an All-Star seat. He made the All-Star team. Ketel Marte, I think he does have a little bit of injury issues. Besides that, any of those two guys would be good. I like Brian Reynolds, but as you guys mentioned, Pittsburgh is looking for young guys in single A or maybe even double A. So that would probably risk Max Meyer, which I hope he's probably not going to get traded anytime soon, unless it's like an offer that's going to blow them out of the water. But besides that, I think Mullins is the guy coming to Miami.
By the way, Hector, you're freaking my boy Daniel out by mentioning trading Yuri Perez. I'm just going to tell you that right now. He's probably sitting there hitting himself in the head, listening to his name being mentioned. But another name.
But if it's for Brian Reynolds, Reynolds,
I'd do it.
At that point, he's got to be like, okay, fine.
Yeah, I think
like I said, you have
Fulton,
so many pitching prospects.
Yeah,
and you have so many guys that are ready. Like they could be ready in September. Yeah. Like Eater, Max, Eddie Edwards. So what happened? So. What if Yuri never just shows up because the Marlins have 5 elite arms, it's crazy. 5 rotation,
and that's what the thing is for an 18-year-old kid. That's why I would look at maybe more more not older guys, but more established names like Daxton Fulton or maybe Evan Fitterer. If you are going to go younger, those could be the guys that I would mention. Anyways, you guys are short on time. Go ahead.
We didn't even get to Aguilar, Rojas, all the bullpen pieces that might get moved. It's going to be a crazy day on Friday. I think there's going to be a lot going on. I'll be at the game on Friday, which I'm really excited about. I just want to watch Craig Mish work. I just want to watch that in action. So that should be a lot of fun. But there's going to be so much going on from now until Friday. And obviously, who knows how many pieces get moved. I think all the bullpen guys are for sale. I think Rojas and Aguilar stay. But there's a baseball game to watch. I don't know how much if you care about it. I know a lot of you
forgot
are.
there was a baseball game.
Yeah, me too. I know a lot of you are focused on the deadline. But for Noah earlier, for Eli, for Hector, for Isaac, yeah, Eli, I know Noah's got a prediction for us. He told me he wants Marte to go anywhere besides the division. He doesn't really care where he ends up. And then he told me that the Marlins better sweep the series because it's the Orioles. And I think a lot of us feel that way. So for everybody here at Fish Stripes, I think the game is already underway. I'm Ethan Medowski signing off. We'll see you on deadline day.
Y'all ready?